Welcome into Pigskin with Pancakes. I'm the host, Paige DeMacos, here with Jamie and Chris. And things are getting a little weird this morning already. I think Chris has had like 17 energy drinks, so I'm sorry.
My energy level is over 100 right now.
Well, yeah, where would you put your energy level? How are you feeling this morning, Chris? Let's start there.
Too high. Yeah, I'm more energetic than I was on the drive in this morning. I don't know what it is. I got here and I'm just all excited.
It's just the positive vibes that Paige and I just give off.
That's right.
Yes,
you know what? That's exactly
vibes.
What it is, guys.
Hopefully that means, it's the beginning of October, it's fall, we're feeling good, it's football season, you're getting into that groove of kind of feeling out what your team looks like. So, Chris, let's start with how your team's looking. How are your teams looking across the board?
They're okay. They're not great.
You have some grievances that you need to get out?
No grievances, really. I'm a little disappointed with some of the production from an Antonio Brown, mainly because Ben Roethlisberger can't score touchdowns on the road.
Wow.
It's really
taking
killing
shots
me.
early.
Well,
I mean,
a wide receiver, you need the quarterback to throw you the ball, and they don't have a good one there when they're on the road. They're on the road today, so I'm a little worried. But I always play the long game in fantasy, right?
Yep.
I drafted a team that I thought was going to do really well. I got to let them play it out a little bit here before I start trading people and giving up everybody. So I'm skeptical, but I think my team's about to turn the corner. Yeah,
you definitely don't want to trade Antonio Brown. You're not doing that, but you do feel you're pretty upset. I'm an Antonio Brown owner. I got him 3rd overall, and Big Ben, hello, dude, find him in the end zone. Come on, what's up, buddy?
You're just praying for home games. You're just praying for home games at this point.
Well, you're glad that they're getting 3 of their road games here out of the way, right? It means their schedule's a little backloaded with some home games. That's certainly helpful.
Things are going to pick up,
especially for the playoff push. If you're in the playoffs in fantasy,
absolutely. Well, let's kick things off. Early morning games. So we'll start with the morning games, and we're going to look at stuff. We know who we're not going to tell you the obvious ones. Okay,
so
we got to
get into Tom Brady today.
Yeah, you should probably not sit Tom Brady. Okay, so we're going to get into some of these guys that you are looking at your RB2 spots, your wide receiver 2 spots, your flex spots, some of these deeper flex positions. So we're going to kick things off with Buffalo, Atlanta. I shouldn't have to tell you to start Matt Ryan. Okay, I hope you know that you should be starting Matt Ryan. But who are some other guys? We'll start with Jamie. Who are some guys that you're looking at in this matchup that might break out this week?
Well, let's look at the other quarterback on the other sideline. If you need some quarterback help, if you're struggling, you don't have one of those top-tier guys, Tyrod Taylor is a good option for you even in standard scoring leagues. And when you're looking at quarterbacks that run give you a high floor. At least 8 rush attempts in every single game to start the year for Tyrod Taylor. 14th in standard scoring. He is a stopgap quarterback option for you if maybe you don't feel comfortable starting Cam Newton today. Maybe you don't feel comfortable starting Derek Carr. This is an option where he might be available in your league, and I think will actually outperform both of those quarterbacks today.
Yeah, quarterbacks that can run the football add tremendous value to their play each and every week. And I look at this Atlanta team that doesn't have Vic Beasley, and he's a guy that's going to get after the quarterback. And him not there, they're throwing a rookie Takk McKinley in there to kind of fill that role. Maybe there's more opportunities for Tyrod Taylor to be able to run the football. That increases his value. He's got some good options to throw the ball to. Yeah. So I agree with Jamie. I really like this play. If you have Ben Roethlisberger and you're just nervous about playing him on the road, Tyrod Taylor's probably available in your league. This may be a good pickup this week.
So Shady had himself a bad week last week, a below average week last week. But when you look at running backs and the top tier guys, this is a guy you got to start this week. Would you guys agree, or are you not? Are you feeling you're a little antsy because he didn't have a great week last week?
Well, no, and I think you'd agree with this. You drafted Shady McCoy in a position where you really can't afford to sit him. You drafted him too high to sit him down after one bad game, and you just hope that the track record is there with LaShawn McCoy. And it is. He has success, and he bounces back really well. So I'm not that overly concerned when things start to become a trend, when I have 3 or 4 games in a row where a guy's playing like this, and then I have to question it. LaShawn McCoy's been in this league for a long time. He's rushed very well for a very long time, and he always adds that element coming out of the backfield, catching the football, especially in this offense where Tyrod Taylor may throw more check-down options and not throw the ball too much down the field. So I'm not concerned about LaShawn McCoy, but it is something I'm keeping an eye on.
You'd be a lot more concerned in a standard scoring league, quite frankly, because
absolutely.
30 rushing yards on his last 26 carries. You could do the math there. That's not good.
Especially if he's not going to get in the end zone.
But he leads the Bills with 18 receptions right now, and would we be shocked if he stays healthy, if he leads the Bills? I'm a big believer, and you invested draft capital in him for a reason. You can't give up on him this early in the season. You have to ride it out a little longer. Injury is the only reason to take these top-tier players out of your lineup in the first month and a half of the season.
Yeah. The last guy in Buffalo I'm going to get to is Charles Clay. He checked this morning on ESPN, only owned in 75% of leagues. when the tight end position across the league has been very poor this year, and you've had guys like Gronkowski get injured and Jordan Reed get injured, and some of the other guys you're worried about, this is a guy who scored, who continuously every week is a guy that ends up in the top 10 for tight ends. I don't know how many times I need to tell people, you need to be starting Charles Clay every week because he's, other than Shady, is the only option in Buffalo that Tyrod Taylor feels comfortable going to.
And why? Because he's getting in the end zone.
Yes.
He's scoring touchdowns. And
Absolutely.
That's a huge thing. So he could have a bad day where he only catches 3 passes. But if he's getting in the end zone, which he has a track record of doing, it's going to make it worth your while to play him. So I agree. If you're in a situation where you drafted a tight end, they're hurt, or you drafted a tight end, they're underperforming, you don't like their matchup this week, Charles Clay is a mainstay in this Buffalo offense. He is the guy that Tyrod Taylor is going to go to. We just talked about it with the check down with LaShawn McCoy. Charles Clay is that option for him. He can go down the field to make catches, but also in that 5 to 10 yard range, Tyrod Taylor is going to be looking for Charles Clay. So I like this as well.
Yeah. All right, when we look at it, let's go to Atlanta,
Okay.
though. I know there's been a lot of anger towards Julio Jones. I've been getting a lot of angry tweets about Julio Jones, and I get it. He's not getting in the end zone, but he's still, you drafted him high, you got to start him. Are there any of those fringe guys, the Taylor Gabriels of the world, Austin Hooper's had a couple of good weeks in and out? Who do you feel most confident on Atlanta's side of the ball?
You got a good nugget about Taylor Gabriel.
Yeah,
I'll let you share this.
Taylor Gabriel, every 6.2 touches indoors, he has a touchdown. I mean, that's a freaky number, and you can see him getting 6-7 touches in this game. So if you're chasing, again, we talked last week a lot about high-end flex spots. If you're the underdog in your matchup and you need big games from other players, and you're kind of in a bind, Gabriel might be that high upside touchdown play in the flex spot this week.
I think the other thing that matters here is you have a situation where Atlanta is a team that plays much better at home. That turf allows them to use their team speed
100%.
a little bit more. I know I've said this for a couple of weeks now. They're just a different team when they're home.
It's the same with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
These teams, they average, I think Pittsburgh averages a touchdown more fantasy-wise at home, and Atlanta's like 5 points more at home. That's a huge difference for fantasy.
It allows them to get their team speed out there with Gabriel and Julio Jones and Matt Ryan. Everything works for them when they're able to be home. So I agree. I think Taylor Gabriel is a guy to keep an eye on. I know we have Austin Hooper here. We said this after week 1 that he was a product of broken coverages and not marking him. And since then, he hasn't done anything. So I stay wary of Austin Hooper as a play.
You can't let 1 week trick you into thinking this is a long-term thing. This is where you look at Austin Hooper and you go, a guy like Charles Clay, you're playing him, who's consistently out there, who's consistently getting touches, and he's just not. There's way too many better options there, and he had the ability to get the ball a lot in that week 1 because we all know what Chicago does. They take away the first guy, and then they got to find somebody else. Right. So you're definitely not starting Austin Hooper.
Yeah, and one of the worst things that can happen to you in fantasy is having a fringe guy have a big week 1, and then you hold on to them 3 or 4 weeks longer than they ever should be on your roster.
Yeah,
he shouldn't even.
And I don't think anyone had Austin Hooper on their team before he had the big game, and I don't think anyone should have him on their team after.
For sure. I think a good thing to mention is then daily fantasy for people who play daily. A good option for you. The next matchup we're getting into, Pittsburgh and Baltimore.
Oh, boy.
This one is always very good. A divisional game. Pittsburgh, again, we talked about a little bit earlier. On the road, they're a different football team, and they still haven't broken out offensively. They really disappointed last week in Chicago where they not only lose the football game but don't get going offensively against a defense that isn't considered elite. So when you guys look at Pittsburgh, let's start there. We know the Big Bens of the world. We know, obviously, Le'Veon Bell. But Le'Veon Bell hasn't had his breakout game yet. And I'm leaning towards the fact that I've had a couple of people tweet me about Big Ben and other options, and I've found better options to start than Big Ben this week.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think if you're starting Roethlisberger this week in a standard 10 or 12 team league, you're making a mistake.
Huge mistake.
Look for Tyrod Taylor. Look for any of these other high upside options. We've seen enough from Ben Roethlisberger on the road to know he's not that guy. And he struggled even more mightily against the Ravens on the road than he's done against other teams. I can't start him. You have to start Bell. You have to start Brown. There are a lot better options on the waiver wire probably in your 10 or 12 team league than Ben Roethlisberger, Tyrod being one of them.
Yeah.
Kind of either has a really good
dependent on who is matched up against Antonio Brown. And this Baltimore secondary is very good. So this seems to me to be a good matchup for Martavis Bryant. But you have to ask yourself, do you trust Ben Roethlisberger on the road? Because if there's any receiver that I'm going to trust on Pittsburgh while they're on the road, it's going to be Antonio Brown.
For sure.
That's the guy I'm going to trust.
Yes.
Martavis Bryant, could he have a touchdown today? Absolutely. He could be involved. I'm just worried about Big Ben on the road. There aren't a lot of touchdowns to go around for the Steelers offense. And if Brown does get covered and the Ravens secondary is good, then you're going to look for a Martavis Bryant, maybe a Juju Smith-Schuster to come out and have a big game. But I'll play Le'Veon Bell because he's out there for literally every snap they play. But other than that, in him and Antonio Brown, I worry about trusting Ben Roethlisberger to perform on the road. I just do.
There's a lot of better options when you look across the league to stream some of these guys. This is where you win your league because you have a really good bench. And you better go to some of your bench players because guys like this, this is not like a small sample size. This Pittsburgh Steelers team is not the same football team on the road.
No.
And you just are not going to see the type of fantasy production I get. Where you draft Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown, top 3 overall consensus, you got to start those guys. But don't expect big numbers from them, so you better have somebody on your bench that you feel confident about having a big week. So maybe you do start a Martavis Bryant in a flex play when you hope that you get a high upside this week because you can't get 5 or 6 points out of your flex position.
Yeah.
But let's look at Baltimore. Joe Flacco, please tell me you're not starting him, okay?
No,
do not be starting.
You
shouldn't be starting Joe Flacco in any league.
Now, I will say, I'm not going to try to justify playing Joe Flacco because I don't think you should. But Joe Flacco,
you are, though.
No, I'm not.
Here we go.
Joe
There's a but.
Joe
There's a but here.
Flacco tends to be able to bounce back from a performance like
For
he had in
sure.
Jacksonville. They're not great. I mean, I was able to look at some of his numbers. He doesn't come out with a 400-yard game for 3 touchdowns. He doesn't have that type of performance.
No, he'll have a better football performance.
Yeah, so if you have Joe Flacco, you don't play him this week, but expect him to bounce back to the point where you may be able to feel comfortable with him a week or 2 down the road. Can I add something on Pittsburgh real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because Periscope was asking about Jesse James this week.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think Jesse James may be able to have a future in this offense. It's just not going to be this week.
Okay.
Because the Ravens have allowed the 11th fewest yards to tight ends since the start of 2016. You need him to have a touchdown or he's not going to do anything. And again, it goes back to my original point with this Pittsburgh team. Where are the touchdowns going to come from?
Yeah,
and where are they going to go?
That's going to be the big problem today for fantasy owners of anybody in these games is where's the offense going to come from? How much is there going to be to go around? You're starting your studs on Pittsburgh. I don't know who you start in Baltimore. Javoris Allen maybe in a flex spot, but I don't really like a lot of players.
It's not sexy. None of those guys. You don't look at it and feel very confident. I think Javoris Allen, it's a back and forth here. I don't feel confident starting. This divisional matchup is always very grinded out, low scoring. They play really tough. They both just came off of really bad losses, so you're going to get the heightened part of that coming into this football game. So I'm not in love with anybody here.
Yeah, and
I'm not in love with anybody here.
Flacco, in 2015 and 2016, the Ravens led the NFL in pass attempts. Led the NFL in pass attempts. There was not a game in 2015 or 16 where Joe Flacco didn't throw the ball more than 30 times. Do you know how many times he's done that this year? Twice already in the first 3 games of the year for them. He's thrown the ball less than 30 times.
Well, he's coming off an injury.
I think
that's the problem here.
But they're being more balanced.
For sure.
So that's where I think Javoris Allen is a better play this week than Joe Flacco because they're trying to put a whole lot in the run. Maybe it's because he's still a little banged up, Joe Flacco, or it's that they want to get back to that balance. So Allen's a much better play, but again, I just don't love it. I don't love it.
There's no confidence in anybody in this matchup that's not named Bell or Brown.
I'm staying away from this matchup.
Yeah, you're not playing Jeremy Maclin. Stop tweeting me about him. He has yet to have a really, really good game.
Yeah.
So if you drafted him high, you're not feeling very confident. All right, another divisional matchup here, Cincinnati playing Cleveland. Cleveland has shown in moments that there can be some things fantasy-wise that you feel pretty confident about. And Cincinnati overall, the first 2 weeks, a huge disappointment. The third week in Green Bay, they get going a little bit, specifically in A.J. Green. You look at here, that looks a lot better. So, Jamie, I'll start with you. What do you like about this matchup specifically from Cincinnati's side of the ball?
I'm nervous to say this, but I kind of like Andy Dalton this week.
Oh, God.
Kind of like Andy Dalton. I would start him over a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, which we just talked about in the last matchup. Dalton's thrown for at least 2 touchdowns in each of his last 14 contests versus the Browns. He owns the Browns. I know, if he's still in your lineup after week 1, I know you're probably, 1, very dedicated or in a very, very deep or 2 quarterback league. But again, it goes back to what's more likely to happen. I will take my chances that Dalton continues his success against a bad defense than that Ben Roethlisberger all of a sudden figures out how to play the Ravens in Baltimore.
I know you had something specifically about A.J. Green you wanted to get to, so get to what you had on A.J. Green.
A.J. Green, 48% of the targets last week, and again, owns the Browns as well, partly why Andy Dalton is so good. At least 120 yards and a touchdown in each of his last 2 games against the Browns. He's going to do it again this week. Had a monster game last week. Start all your Bengals.
So do you like Andy Dalton as much as you hated on Stephon Diggs last week? I just want to check.
You didn't even get to the Minnesota portion.
You knew that was going to happen. You knew it was coming.
Do you like Andy Dalton as much as you hated on Stephon Diggs last week? I just want to let the people know. Because Stephon Diggs did
just get your grievances out now, Jamie. Just let the people know.
Do you want to apologize to Stephon Diggs?
No.
Okay.
I want to apologize to everybody who took my advice. And I want to apologize in advance to anybody who takes my advice again this week.
Oh, my God. It's so good. I love it.
So,
do you have any thoughts, Chris?
Right? I mean, Joe Mixon is going to be a major player in this Bengals offense as well. I mean, I think this is a guy that they want to turn the ball over to. Jeremy Hill, Giovanni Bernard, they just didn't work out for them, and they drafted Joe Mixon, and they're gonna give him the ball. I mean, he's getting more touches per game than those guys, and I think they're really going to try to get him involved in the offense. So I agree with you, Jamie. I'm playing all the Bengals this week, even including Andy Dalton. I really like the way he's played.
You like everybody this week.
I do. I like everyone. I actually like everyone on both sides of these matchups. I know Jamie's a little down on DeShone Kizer, but the same thing we talked about with Tyrod Taylor, the ability to run the football. DeShone Kizer has that. So I think this is more of a daily fantasy play, I think.
I was going to say, he's actually one of my guys that I'm looking out for in a daily fantasy
if you're looking at a two-quarterback league, I think DeShone Kizer is a really good play because that leg element, the ability to extend plays, and that allows him to throw the ball and run the ball. It just, as Jamie, I'll use your term, a higher floor. And that's what you're looking for with daily fantasy or a quarterback 2 league. And I think DeShone Kizer is a good fit this week. I really do.
All right, let's go to the second-year quarterback, Jared Goff, going on the road against the old Dallas Cowboys. Now, I like the stat we have here. This one comes from Jamie, too.
Jamie's dropping some knowledge here
Jared
today.
Goff on the road.
Yep,
okay, this is a good one. I can't believe, because I think of what he played last year and how he wasn't that great last year.
No.
And I look at that and I go, this stat kind of threw me for a loop a little bit. But Jamie, I'll let you take this because Jared Goff's been a pretty good fantasy.
He's been playing much better.
Yeah, I have to hat tip to Wes Anderson, who writes Inside the Numbers for FanRagSports.com. You can check that out every Thursday. That's a cheap plug.
That was good.
Check that out every Thursday on FanRagSports.com. And this is his little nugget that Jared Goff has performed actually better on the road in his career. 5.82 average more fantasy points in standard scoring on the road than at home. Dallas's defense doesn't scare me. Hasn't scared me in about 4 or 5 years.
No Sean Lee, it looks like.
No Sean Lee.
Which is going to be able to impact.
I think I might be buying into the Rams. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid that Chris has made for me on Sean McVay. I'm drinking it. I'm drinking it.
Because I'm a big believer in Sean McVay.
Love Sean McVay.
He's doing a very good job with this offense. And I think the other thing that's helping Jared Goff have these types of numbers is, look, Sammy Watkins, he's doing pretty well in this offense. He had 2 touchdowns last week. He's becoming a #1 threat. Robert Woods is a guy to keep an eye on, maybe as a flex play this week because he's involved in the offense. They have Cooper Kupp. There's just so many weapons. And from a fantasy perspective, you worry about that because Jared Goff can spread the ball all over the place. But you have faith in Jared Goff and his ability to score fantasy points because he's got people that can catch the football.
Can I just give a shout out to Sean McVay for revitalizing Todd Gurley? Because finally, I got Gurley in the 2nd round, and he is completely different running back in this offense. He's finally being utilized in the way that he was envisioned being used because he has an offensive-minded coach who knows how to use him. He uses him out of the backfield. He throws the ball to him. He's running the ball with confidence again. And if you're a Todd Gurley owner, this might be the highest value pick of this year is where Todd Gurley ends up this year because I think he's going to continue to be a top running back.
An improved offensive line is helping that as well.
Absolutely.
And that's why he's able to have
an ability to throw the ball.
And an ability to also catch the ball out of the backfield, which is helping him as well. So, yeah, I mean, this Rams team offensively, I will go on record and say I find it tough that anyone's going to stop them. And that means a good thing if you own any of them in fantasy.
Especially in the division that they're playing in where nobody really looks very good.
Yeah, right now nobody looks good other than the Rams. That's a weird statement to say at this point.
But you have to keep in mind that they're going to match up against those teams, and it's probably going to be good for you fantasy-wise. Now, when we look at Dallas and that side of the ball, we know the Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, but Dak is actually a little bit better fantasy-wise than I think people are giving him credit for. He's actually only owned in 70% of leagues, and I found that very weird because he's finished in the top 12, I think, every week thus far.
Yeah, very, very safe. If you're looking for somebody on your team or in daily fantasy that's just going to be steady Eddie, that's Dak Prescott.
Steady
Eddie.
It's 8-19. You're getting into steady Eddie.
But it's so important. Roster construction, especially in DFS, is so important. You need to know what your plan is, where you need to take risks, where you don't need to take risks. Dak Prescott's that perfect quarterback that's going to get you in that 10, 11, 12 quarterback each week in the ratings, and it's not going to hurt you. But I look at the rest of this offense, you're going to start Zeke. Zeke's very good. Apparently, he's not dead. Shocking. And then on offense, I don't know. What do you make? I want to ask you this, Chris. What do you make of Des Bryant? Because if he didn't drag 100 people into the end zone approximately last week,
he's not no more X. He can't be throwing up the X.
But this isn't anything new.
No,
I don't know why people will
down.
continue to believe. I think there's just a lot of Cowboys fans that play fantasy football because I don't know where the infatuation with Dez being a top 5 wide receiver is because he just doesn't get the ball anymore.
Okay, anyone who thinks Dez is a top 5 wide receiver is foolish.
Tony Romo's not his quarterback.
I mean, look,
breaking news. No longer over the quarterback.
Yeah, there's
that
so
makes
much
a difference.
other wide receiver talent that I would take over Dez Bryant, but the issue really is, one, I think Dez is losing a step. I just do. I think he's getting older. And two, I'll continue to slam down on the computer and slam down on the couch. Who else is Dak Prescott throwing the ball to? There's nobody else in that offense. So everyone can sell out to just go after and stop Dez Bryant. So
and
there's nobody else. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not scared of Cole Beasley. I'm just not. He doesn't give me nightmares. He doesn't give me nightmares either. Bryce Butler. There's no boogie
the Cardinals
monster
might have
under the bed.
Gives Justin Bethel nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, so there's just nobody there that I'm scared of. So everyone can kind of sell out for Dez Bryant, and he can't put up points.
And you just have to understand the offense that they've created around Dak Prescott is a much different offense than they were running when they had Tony Romo as their quarterback. It's just a different offense. He goes to Jason Witten and Ezekiel Elliott. Those are pretty much the only two offensive pieces on the Cowboys that you feel confident starting every week.
Yeah, it's a bad situation. I don't like it, and I think you're just going to see.
I don't like it.
I
do not like it.
Jamie, you should steal this for your haters going to hate. It should be Dez Bryant this week.
Well, no, he hasn't been good.
No, he's not good.
It's not good enough for a hater's going to hate. All right, Tennessee and Houston. Let's get into this. Let's get into this matchup.
Love this matchup.
Oh, you do?
Love this matchup.
Okay, Chris. Well, let's start with the Tennessee side of the ball. Okay, Marcus Mariota had a lot of hype going into the season. He's been an up and down fantasy quarterback thus far, but he's continued to give you kind of what you thought you were going to get. I think the main thing here that we need to get to is. The whole Derrick Henry train might be a little pump the brakes on that because DeMarco Murray is still the featured back there.
So where do you want to start? You want to start with the quarterbacks here?
Yeah, let's start with the QBs.
Is there a quarterback that you're more interested in? Because I got numbers for both.
Let's go with Tennessee.
You
want
Marcus Mariota?
Yeah.
Okay, he's only got 3 passing touchdowns on the season.
Yeah, that's
Yet he is still a top 10 fantasy quarterback.
Why?
You must be considering yourself sitting there. Why? Why is he a top 10 fantasy option, Chris? Because his legs are still a factor. We talked about this with Tyrod Taylor. We're going to talk about it again with Marcus Mariota. He's got 77 rushing yards as a quarterback so far in the season. That's good for 6th in the NFL in terms of quarterbacks. So he's extending plays with his legs. He's keeping drives alive. That's allowing him to still have fantasy value. On the other side of things, Deshaun Watson, I get it. He had a really great week last week.
Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
We're pumping the brakes because Tennessee has faced Russell Wilson and Blake Bortles. They held the two of them combined to 55 yards on the ground. What does Deshaun Watson rely on? His legs. You take that away, you remove a big weapon for Deshaun Watson, then he's got to stay in the pocket, he's got to make reads, and I'm still not comfortable in him making those reads successfully at the NFL level yet, so he's a QB2 this week.
For sure, and also you have to keep in mind, and I know we'll get to this because you have a stat for this later, but New England's defense is not good. It's not good against fantasy.
Not good is the understatement of the 2017 season.
We'll get into that.
New England's defense is bad, and
we'll get into it. We'll get into it in a little bit.
Let's crunch the numbers.
Calm yourself. Calm yourself, Chris. Okay, let's talk about Lamar Miller. I get a lot of tweets about this guy because a lot of people want to drop Lamar Miller. They're aggravated. They drafted him really high. They're not getting the kind of upside they thought they were going to get. So let's go to the running backs here because DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry, Lamar Miller. You're starting DeMarco Murray.
Yes.
Well, let's just glaze on past that. But what do you look at from Derrick Henry? What do you need to get from him to feel confident starting him? And a Lamar Miller who a lot of people are angry with, I guess.
All right, do you want to tackle one of these?
Well, let's start with Lamar Miller. It's volume.
I think it's foolish.
Volume.
To sit Lamar Miller or cut him.
You can't.
No.
Volume. Who else is going to get touches in the backfield?
You.
Jamie.
I'm not ready.
Your phone's ringing, I think.
Yeah.
I said, I know. Volume. And again, we've seen him have success in the past. I know it's frustrating to have a running back that's, especially this early in the season, where you're not getting the production that you need from him. But again, at some point, we've seen this. We've seen Miller have success before. He's getting enough work. This is not an issue of he's not getting the work. When you put those two things together, he will break out eventually. You just want to make sure he's in your lineup when he does, and then moving forward.
You ready for this?
Yeah, I'll let you get into Derrick Henry a little bit because I know that you've had kind of a borderline Chris's crush on Derrick Henry. It's a borderline crush with Derrick Henry. But he hasn't been what you wanted him to be.
I'm going to add one more thing to Lamar Miller. There's only 3 running backs who see more snaps a game than he does. Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, and Ty Montgomery. That's the company that Lamar Miller keeps in terms of snaps per game that he's out there for. Again, like Jamie said, it's a volume play. He's going to be out there enough to see the football. It's just a matter of him finally breaking through. Okay, I got good news for everyone who's an owner of Derrick Henry because when he's out there, he is touching the ball close to 45% of the time. Okay, and over the course of 100 snaps, he's worth more in terms of fantasy points than DeMarco Murray. He's worth 30.9 fantasy points compared to 20.3. So again, it's a long-term play with Derrick Henry. Over the course of the season, he'll make you more points. I'm going the Moneyball approach here with fantasy football.
Okay.
Murray's still the running back 1, but I don't hate Derrick Henry as an RB2 or a flex play this week because the volume is still there. When he's out there, he's touching the ball, and he's worth more over the course of the season.
How about some of these fringe guys? Rashard Matthews. Let's talk about him.
Rashard Matthews.
You like him in this week?
10 targets, and you don't have Corey Davis. And he went up against Seattle and caught 6 catches for a team-high 87 yards and a touchdown against Seattle.
Yeah, that's a good flex play.
Houston doesn't have the secondary Seattle has.
He's also still available. I checked in over 30% of leagues.
Yeah, and there's no Corey Davis this week, and Eric Decker had his opportunity, had his day in the sun, and I couldn't find him.
Failed.
I had to put sunglasses on. I couldn't see him. So, I mean, Rashard Matthews is a definite play this week with Corey Davis being out. On the other side, I am not buying into the Bruce Ellington hype.
Okay.
Just let's everybody pump the brakes on that. He did have 7 targets and ended the day with a touchdown, but you have Hopkins, who's still the number 1, and Will Fuller began practicing for this team.
Yeah, which
when
is huge
he comes
for
back, he is going to be the number 2 receiver there. So Ellington's going to slide down the depth charts. I will say this: if you have Hopkins, here's a little bit of a nugget for you. Tennessee gives up the 4th most points to wide receivers in fantasy this year.
So you feel pretty confident about that?
Yes, I do.
Seattle was the one team that could not get it going offensively, and they finally got it going against Tennessee. Next matchup we're going to get into, Detroit and Minnesota. Another divisional game here. Detroit coming off a shouldn't have been loss, and Minnesota.
Still a touchdown, actually.
Minnesota, still a touchdown.
The
NFL is still trying to figure out what a touchdown is. And Minnesota, who came off a big win at home. Case Keenum looked like a formidable quarterback. I got some tweets about Case Keenum this morning. Let me tell you this. Do not. Oh,
you read my note on this.
Start
then. Yeah, you
Case
read my
Keenum.
note on this.
Do not start Case Keenum. And do not tweet me if you decide to start him and you're angry with yourself because it's a moronic decision and that's an overreaction. And Detroit has shown you consistency, which we haven't seen from anybody else in the NFL other than the Kansas City Chiefs. Consistently a good football team. Do not start Case Keenum.
All right, you ready for
what
this?
do you guys want to talk about?
You ready for this? Because I know everyone's like, oh, I'm going to be the smart guy in my fantasy league. Or the smart girl in my fantasy league.
Never ends well.
I'm going to play Case Keenum this week. Don't do it. Detroit, through the first 3 weeks of the season, the fifth toughest matchup for quarterbacks.
Yeah, this
An
defense.
average of 11 points for a quarterback. Do not play Case Keenum, who is a not good quarterback who had a good week.
Detroit's the best defense nobody talks about, both in real life and in fantasy. And I think that they've shown us that. And also, it's Case Keenum. Like, let's sit down, think about it.
Well, you are sitting.
Look at the name, Case Keenum. I have seen enough of Case Keenum. Unless he's going to go out there against Ole Miss, I'm not playing him.
Oh, you're dating back to his Houston days.
You have a specific Detroit defense stat, don't you?
Do I? Let me look here.
I thought you had a specific.
Maybe I do. I'm looking at my notes here. I look. Darius Slay is a big guy for me because when I look at Darius Slay, I think he's going to match up very well against Stephon Diggs, and I think you look at this situation for Diggs, and Jamie knows Stephon Diggs very well. It's going to be tough for Diggs to have a good week. Now, I'm not going to go Jamie and say haters going to hate, but this is now going to be the second straight week where he's going up against a tough corner, and Darius Slay's a better corner for him. It's a tougher matchup. So I think Diggs kind of slides as a wide receiver too, but overall this Detroit defense I think is going to make it difficult. It slides Adam Thielen down to a wide receiver in a flex play, kind of slides all the Minnesota guys down a little bit, and that's why I think the Detroit defense is going to be really solid.
How about Minnesota's defense? When we look at Minnesota, how do you feel here?
So you have Xavier Rhodes. He's going to go up against the number 1 wide receiver for Detroit. That's going to be Marvin Jones. He's going to have a tough week. And look, this number, I know, look, Minnesota, they've given up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. So you're thinking, Chris, I got to play Marvin Jones. No, don't do that. Because Xavier Rhodes is going to be matched up against, it's going to be Marvin Jones against Xavier Rhodes.
So how about a guy like Golden Tate?
Yeah, exactly. This is where I'm going with this. Kenny Golladay banged up. Somebody needs to get the touches. The door needs to open for somebody. Golden Tate. So Minnesota gives up the second most points to wide receiver. I think this is the week where Golden Tate has that game, and everyone's like, oh, I got to pick up Golden Tate, and then he doesn't do anything next week. This is the Golden Tate game.
How about Amir Abdullah? How about the running game here? What do you guys do? Because he's been a guy who's been kind of a disappointment, has been kind of a fringe guy thus far. He was supposed to be the starter, supposed to be getting all the touches, but he just hasn't been able to break out necessarily. Do you feel confident in a daily fantasy league? He's very cheap and going to pick him up.
What do you make of this matchup? Because this is interesting.
It's interesting because I looked at the stat that you have here that he's still splitting carries, but when Abdullah is on the field, he is getting the ball, and again, it's kind of what you expect when they have him out there. Amir Abdullah for about 2 years now has been one of the strangest fantasy plays. I think that it's very tough to gauge when he's going to have a lot of success, when he's not going to have a lot of success. I never am going to feel very confident starting him, but I'm also never going to feel confident that, no, this is the week I have to sit him, I have better options.
Minnesota also gives up the least amount of points to running backs so far in the season, 8.8 a game.
So that's what you see. They're selling out to
they're
stop
selling
the
out
run
to the
game,
run,
and they're allowing, which
and
is
they're
weird.
They're good at it.
Yeah.
They're good at it because they
Yeah.
give up the least amount of points, but they're giving up the second most amount the other direction. So that kind of shows you, outside of Xavier Rhodes, they're not that great in the secondary. That's opening up the opportunity. So Amir Abdullah, Riddick, I'm sitting them. I'm not
but
playing
in daily
them this week.
fantasy league, Golden Tate.
Golden Tate. I think this is
option.
a perfect week to play Golden Tate in daily fantasy because they don't think he's going to cost a whole lot.
No, he's not.
And I think it's a good play this week.
He's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
He's pretty cheap. All right, moving on to the next matchup, Carolina and New England. Chris has got a lot here. Chris has got a lot to get to, okay? We do this little thing called Chris's Crush every week. We'll get into that. But overall, Cam Newton has been a disappointment, okay? He's been a huge disappointment thus far. Chris.
Yep, we got two graphics here.
Tell us why.
I got the stats department. They
Cam
worked hard.
Newton is not going to be a
So
disappointment
let's start with the
this
New
week.
England defense, okay?
New England defense.
The New England Patriot defense, as we mentioned earlier, look at this. Not good. They give up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, running backs. They give up the second most points to tight ends.
Is this good?
This is all bad.
Okay.
Don't
Bad.
play.
Just making sure.
Don't play the New England defense this week. The second most points to tight ends and the sixth most points to wide receivers. So you add all this up. I crunched the numbers. I did all the math.
You
okay?
crunched
Yeah,
a lot
I had the
of
numbers
okay.
department work on it. What does it all mean? It means.
We have a numbers department?
Yes, we do. It means
Chris's numbers department.
that the Chris's Crush for this week
Oh boy, here we
is
go.
the one, the only.
Oh boy, here we go.
Cameron Newton, the fourth junior. Look at him.
Oh, boy.
Look at how good he is. He is set to have for this season his second highest completion percentage of his career at almost 62%, and his yards per attempt in his career 6.8. It's about a tenth off of where it normally sits, anywhere from 6.9 to 7.2. Cam Newton is not having that bad of a season. And against this defense that gives up the most points to quarterbacks, the most points to running backs, where, hey, Christian McCaffrey's a good play this week, and to wide receivers, Cam Newton has his bounce-back performance. He has the breakout performance. If you don't play Cam Newton this week, you're foolish. I'm crushing on Cam Newton.
Okay, Jamie and I are ready to
Go ahead,
put this
break it
one on
down.
the tee,
Yep,
set it
go ahead.
off because
Cam Newton good for 25 fantasy points this week. You heard it here first.
all right, I can't wait to play that one back.
Fine.
Just be careful here
That's
with
fine.
Cam because Cam's still injured. Okay,
Nobody
news.
can convince me he's not hurt.
Yeah, Cam Newton is still injured. He's not the same running quarterback that he was, which is where he got a lot of his fantasy points. So I'm not saying it's not a bad play because of the matchup here. You like the play. But if you're expecting Cam Newton to be the fantasy god that he was 2 years ago, I don't think that Cam Newton's coming back. And if he doesn't come back in week 4, it sure as hell is not happening for the rest of the season. This is the matchup. If he doesn't break out this week,
look,
you're
I don't
feeling real
I don't
bad.
make the big bucks sitting here making
You don't
easy
make-
plays.
You don't make the
okay?
big
You don't get
bucks.
paid for this show.
That's a good point. So I got to go bold. So I'm going with Cam Newton this week. I can't
So-
look. Jamie went to find Biggs last
So,
week. I can't.
no, that's
No,
one
I
of the
like
things.
it. I like it.
We walked in today, and we all had to say something we were grateful for, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I am grateful that Chris is letting me off the hook for how bad my Stephon Diggs pick was last week to not have success with his Cam Newton pick
Yeah.
this week. Chris, let's do a friendly little show bet.
Okay.
Okay, I like that. I
What-
like
okay.
where this
I
is
don't know.
going.
What's the wager?
I don't know. What should we wager? Should we wager something like
Something
I
for
don't know.
about
Something
breakfast
fun.
maybe for next weekend?
Yeah.
I'll
Maybe
bring it-
somebody
yeah,
brings
okay.
in breakfast
So
for
what
next
do you want
weekend?
the bet to be?
I say Tyrod Taylor has more fantasy points today than Cam Newton?
Woo!
Okay.
I
so
love it.
I will get you. So it'll be a breakfast bet.
Yes.
This is
the theme
awesome.
of the
Live
Pigskin
on
with
the show.
Pancakes. So Tyrod Taylor, you have Tyrod Taylor. I have
Yes.
Cam Newton.
Yes.
Done.
This
Agreed.
is really fun.
Agreed.
And then
Agreed.
I just am the beneficiary
You're-
of
yeah.
getting the free breakfast,
Yes.
no matter who wins. I'm the winner
Yes,
here.
you're
Really,
good.
I'm the winner.
Paige worked her way into a free breakfast.
But I'm
Chris.
gonna put a poll up right after the show ends to see who thinks is gonna win. So Tyrod Taylor for Jamie, Cam Newton for Chris.
That's right.
This is gonna be fun, guys.
Okay.
So let's get into
on a
this
serious
matchup.
note.
Other than
Yes.
Cam, other than you're never,
Yeah.
ever starting the New England defense until otherwise noted. And I know we had a Your Team Sucks for the keepers that was about the New England defense and asking if Bill Belichick still coached that team because they don't have the talent and they haven't shown you. They've just gotten lit up. Now 2 games at home, specifically I think of Houston and Kansas City, who don't have explosive offenses, really taking it to that defense. So let's move on to the offensive side of the ball. You're obviously starting Tom Brady. You're starting Gronkowski. You're starting Brandon Cooks. But who are some of these? Mike Gillislee had a kind of a week where people were disappointed after his first 2 good weeks. Who do you like on the fringe guys here in New England? You like Chris Hogan again this week?
I don't. Well, I think I've made it clear how much I don't like Chris Hogan. Just because I think Tom Brady, he does move the ball around, but he's going to go to his trusted guys. And Brandon Cooks is going to have a slower corner matching up against him in Darryl Worley. You know what that means to me? Deep routes all day long. because Brandon Cooks has got speed, and he's going to be able to blow past Worley, and it could be the Brandon Cooks show part 2. I'm calling my shot. The Brandon Cooks show part 2 this week. He's going to have a huge game. And Gronk's always going to be a good play, and I just...
You don't feel confident? You're like me. I hate the New England running game.
The New England running game, because
you
know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be like, oh, I really like Mike Gillislee this week, and he's not going to get any touches, and then I got to come in here and justify it.
I try to tell you guys.
I'd rather pump the brakes and say I'm not taking any of the New England running backs.
If you have Gillislee, you have to. If you played fantasy, let's say 7-8 years ago, you have to play him like you played Jerome Bettis.
Yes.
You just have to assume that you need that. You need those 2 or 3 carries.
Were they playing fantasy when Jerome Bettis was a running back?
They were.
Okay.
They
I
were.
was.
You need those 2 or 3 carries inside the 5-yard line to justify the lack of overall touches that he gets.
Agreed.
Yeah. And you're going to be frustrated. So if you're starting those guys, if you're starting a New England running back as your RB1, you're in a lot of trouble. I'll just say that.
Yes.
You're in a lot of trouble. If he's an RB2 and he gets in the end zone, you feel pretty confident. He did that in the first 2 weeks. Last week was a little bit of a disappointment for him fantasy-wise. But if you have Mike Gillislee, you got to start him. But he's an RB2, and in a standard league, maybe you feel a little bit more confident because you know he's going to get some touches there. But I'm going to continue to say this one. I hate New England running backs. I never draft them because it's just a frustration week after week trying to figure out what Bill Belichick's going to do. And Bill Belichick does not tell anybody what he's doing, so good luck trying to figure that out.
I got a daily play for you.
Okay, I love it.
I have a stack daily play for you. Ready for this?
Yeah.
So if you're going to play Cam Newton, because you're going to be able to get him cheap because he hasn't been good through the season.
Yeah.
I got the stack for you.
Okay, what's the stack?
Devin Funchess.
Okay.
Get Cam and Devin together.
All
Why?
right.
Because you got Kelvin Benjamin who's banged up. You have Greg Olsen who's out. Somebody has to step up. Devin Funchess is seeing the most snaps per game on anybody on this team in the wide receiver department.
That's a good thing.
51 per game.
Yeah.
Nobody else is close to even 50% of the offensive snaps. So he's the guy out there a lot. He can go, Cam Newton's going to go his way quite a bit. So in regular fantasy, standard PPR, I think he's a wide receiver 2 flex play. But daily, if I can stack him and have him.
This is a good stack.
If I can have him and Cam, I think you could have a lot of success.
Based off the matchup.
I like the matchup.
That they're playing
Trust
New
me,
England.
if they're playing Seattle or Arizona's defense, I'm not doing it.
Quickly, let's do the Jonathan Stewart, Christian McCaffrey. Where do you guys see these guys starting? Where do you feel confident starting either one of them at a running back or RB1, RB2, or a flex play?
I don't like Stewart this week.
No, I mean, Stewart's very touchdown dependent. Maybe if you're in a touchdown-only league and you need a flyer or a touchdown-only DFS, he's a guy. But McCaffrey's the obvious PPR play, but in a standard league, I'm not sure you're very confident starting him above a flex play.
Touches diminished last week. Only had 4 touches in week 3 compared, if you go back to week 1 where he had 13 on the ground. So his production's coming from the passing game. He had 11 targets, and that is because Greg Olsen's out of the lineup. And Cam's got to get the ball to somebody, so he's getting the ball to Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. So I like McCaffrey as a very safe running back 2 play in a PPR league. If you're in a standard league where you need McCaffrey to get touches on the ground, I just don't know if they're going to do it. They're going to try to give the ball to Stewart. I don't like Stewart. New England's only given up 6 rushing touchdowns in the last 19 games.
Yeah.
So it's just a weird matchup. I like McCaffrey in a PPR league. I hate both in a standard league.
Yeah, I'm not too confident about this Carolina offense yet. I'm in the wait and see mode. I'll let Chris be the one who goes out on the limb saying that Cam Newton's going to have a big week.
It'll be breakfast on the show tomorrow.
Yeah, breakfast on the show next week. All right, Jacksonville and the New York Jets. Moving right along.
This is weird. This is weird.
I'm just kidding.
We're in a weird situation with this game.
Yeah, what do you like about this game?
Not a lot.
Okay.
This is the first time that we're seeing a team play a game after London. Teams normally
no
have their bye after the London game.
Yeah.
Jacksonville said, no thank you. We don't want the bye week now, NFL. We'll play.
Well, it's too early. Too early to take
Too early, but
week.
we've never seen a team bounce back and play after the London game. We don't know. Blake Bortles, he may have left his game back in London. We don't know. Blake Bortles is not very good.
Well, here's the thing. Did they actually play a full game? Because Baltimore didn't really show up, so I feel like
No,
they weren't,
so maybe they're a little
very
fresh.
tired after that game.
The Jets, towards the top of giving up fantasy points to quarterbacks.
Yep.
Shocking.
Bortles, 4 touchdowns on 31 attempts last week. I like Bortles as a QB2 in a 2 QB league. Okay. Other than that, no.
Yeah, you got to stay away.
I cannot live with myself starting Blake Bortles and losing my advantage. I just can't. I just know at the end of the day, I will just be so sad and depressed at myself. It's just not worth it.
Oh,
it's not worth it.
Let's talk about the
Jets. Hold on. Okay. Do you hear that?
Oh, what is it?
It's Leonard Fournette taking over the Jacksonville.
Oh, here we go. This is Chris. All right, talk about your boy.
Guy sees 39 snaps a game. He's out there for 57% of their snaps, and he's put up 30 more fantasy points than Chris Ivory. Okay. Chris Ivory, send him on a plane. Send him back to London because he's not playing. He's not doing anything in this offense.
I'm shocked Chris Ivory couldn't hold the job down.
TJ Yeldon is who I meant.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, TJ Yeldon as well, like shocked.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette has taken over this team. I mean, it is his offense. It is his group. He's the guy. Disregard everybody else. I don't care who it ends up being. You can do whatever. Leonard Fournette's the guy.
You can do whatever.
You can do whatever.
You can do whatever you like.
Do whatever you like.
Cannot get fantasy advice like that
Chris
anywhere
is doing
else.
TI lyrics this morning on the fantasy show. This is very entertaining. Okay, guys, is there anything else you like here? Do you like an Alan Hearns? Some of these fringe guys flex. Okay, Chris is saying.
Do you want to do this again?
Yeah, let's go to Chris.
We did this on Thursday.
Let's go right to Chris.
Don't play Alan Hearns. Just don't do it.
Do you have some statistical analysis on why you're not starting Alan Hearns? Or are we just making blatant statements now, Chris?
I do, because he's not out there as much as like Marquise Lee. He's not
touchdowns though.
He's not seeing. But
oh, I like where this is going.
Okay.
A little back and forth
and that's
here.
fine.
Hearns
isn't getting enough targets. So the same justification that we used for telling everyone to not play Austin Hooper earlier, I think is the same justification and rationale here. He's not seeing enough touches to warrant me playing Hearns. I don't want to play anyone in the Jacksonville wide receiver core. I just don't like anybody. And I think Hearns is a guy that sneaks into your lineup because of injury, and if you want to put some solace in the fact that the Jets give up the 5th most points to wide receivers.
I was going to say, when you hear numbers like that, you feel pretty good.
But I just think, I don't know if Hearns is going to get enough targets. I just don't.
Let's go to Jamie.
It's a little early for the Hearns play. I think he's your buy, fill-in kind of a guy. But he's not getting a lot of targets, but he's being productive with the targets that he has. If you're looking for a high upside, cheap option in DFS or somebody that's on the waiver wire, I don't hate starting him. But again, right now, if you're starting him this week, it's because you're replacing somebody that's hurt.
Never play a Jet in fantasy ever. Ever.
Yeah.
Says the New York Jets.
Well, good. No, we've covered the Jets side of things. Never play a New York Jet in fantasy.
Yeah, you shouldn't be starting any New York Jets at this point, until otherwise noted. They don't have anything offensively to keep you excited, and if you're starting one of those guys, I'm sorry for you, and you're probably from New York. All right, moving on. San Francisco and Arizona. San Francisco coming off a rather interesting offensive performance that they had on a Thursday night against the LA Rams. It was an offensive showdown it was very weird to watch that game go back and forth. I don't anticipate that Brian Hoyer is going to be lighting it up like he was last week, but this is an offensive, this Cardinals team is dealing with a lot of injuries. So we'll get into the Cardinals side, but let's start with San Francisco and any of those guys that you feel confident starting.
All right, I'm calling a timeout on your Brian Hoyer statement.
Yeah.
Because I think Brian Hoyer might actually be a quarterback 2 play this week.
A quarterback 2 play, sure, but I got a lot of tweets about him starting in a 12-team league, and you're out of your damn mind.
That's foolish. Maybe it's a daily play, and maybe as a quarterback 2 in a 2 QB league, because he doesn't turn the ball over a lot.
No, he's a game manager.
So he's going to keep it off the board that way. But he's also going up against a team that so far in this point in the season has given up the 5th most points to quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So you like the matchup for Hoyer this week. Again, I don't know if he's going to throw enough touchdowns to justify being a quarterback 1 or throw for as many yards. But a solid QB2 option this week, I think Brian Hoyer is.
How about Carlos Hyde, Pierre Garçon, some of these other guys?
With Hyde, he is going to play. Yeah. They're going to give it a go today, but you just worry about his ability to run the ball. He's on the 5th hardest defense to score as a running back. I think at best he's a running back 2, and then you got the injury to play into it. I don't love it.
No, I don't love the Carlos Hyde play this week. Pierre Garçon is going to be a matchup against Patrick Peterson, which has been bad news for any wide receiver that has caught that matchup.
Trent Taylor's going to be in the slot, which means he's going to have Tyrann Mathieu on him. So the one guy that I like is Marquise Goodwin.
Absolutely. That left side of the offense is going to be a strong play because
with all
the respect, Justin Bethel is going to be on that side.
All right, let's talk about the Arizona side of the ball. We'll start off with Carson Palmer, who, although they did not win the football game last week, he throws for over 300 yards, has a 22 points in standard scoring. You feel pretty confident. That's what you expect out of Carson Palmer fantasy-wise. He's not always – he's kind of in that same play as a Phillip Rivers and a Jay Cutler where he doesn't always look the best on the field, but fantasy-wise, he's always up there high in production. And I think both Chris and I put him on notice last week as that was the last week. We were giving him the opportunity to score points and show us that he's the fantasy quarterback we think he is, and I think he's a top 12 quarterback this week again.
Well, we just talked about the Cardinals not being good against quarterbacks in fantasy or giving up a lot of points to quarterbacks in fantasy. 49ers aren't much better. They're giving up 17.3 points per week here through week 3 of the season to opposing quarterbacks. This is what you have to ask yourself if you're a Carson Palmer owner. Do you believe in the Cardinals' offensive line long enough to stay him upright and let him make those big plays? Because we've seen it. Yeah. You keep him upright,
he's fine.
He can make the deep throw to Fitz. He can throw the deep ball to J.J. Nelson. They're going to have John Brown back this week. So trust me, you can keep him upright. There's big play potential. How much faith do you have in that offensive line? I'm skeptical. I play him So far, he's been able to make the big plays. So until further notice, I think you got to play Carson Palmer.
Yeah, I'm in a 16-team league where he's a top 16 quarterback. I mean, he's gonna put up enough fantasy points. The issue here is, like Chris said, they have a lot of offensive line injuries. Mike Upati's out now for a couple of weeks. He's on IR.
Yeah.
But they're hoping that they can get enough. They've made Andre Ellington now the RB1, which I think should have happened about 2 weeks ago. They're trying to figure out what they have here. John Brown is back. That adds another dynamic part to the offense. So we'll see with Carson. But let's move to these position players. Okay. Fitzgerald had an unbelievable week last week. Play Larry. You always play Larry. But of J.J. Nelson and Jerron Brown and John Brown, you're seeing the first week of John Brown. Which of these guys do you feel confident starting? Because I'm kind of on the fence with all three of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure I love all of them. Like I'm still a wait and see on John Brown. And kind of back to Chris's point, the offensive line plays a big role in John Brown and J.J. Nelson's involvement in the offense. When you're looking for big plays down the field, you have to protect the quarterback long enough for those big plays down the field to develop. And I have no confidence in the Cardinals' offensive line, even at home, to keep him up long enough for those plays. I think Larry's the obvious play. Maybe Jerron Brown early, although we caught that big touchdown early on Monday Night Football, and then we almost never heard from him again. So unless you own Larry Fitzgerald, I'm not all that confident in any other pass catcher, aside from maybe Andre Ellington.
15 targets for Larry Fitzgerald last week. John Brown's playing, but he's not playing 100% of snaps.
Yeah.
So they're going to really manage his workload. So if you're a John Brown owner,
he's had injuries for all of last season and now this season.
If you're a John Brown owner, you just kind of have to play the wait and see game. You can keep John Brown knowing that he's healthy, but I don't know if you can really play him this week and feel comfortable in it. And I think you're going to see a lot of J.J. Nelson and then John Brown and then J.J. Nelson and John Brown. Does any one of them find some consistency in the passing game? I'm not really sure. So I'm with Jamie. Besides Larry Fitzgerald, I don't love any of these Cardinals.
No, the only other guy I look to play is potentially a J.J. Nelson, just because he has been the only consistent part of this offense aside from Larry Fitzgerald. And even the week before, when Larry didn't have a great week, J.J. Nelson had a pretty good week offensively. So you look at him in a deep flex PPR league where you're looking for a wide receiver that has some high upside, and he's a guy who, if Carson does have time, he's always going to JJ in the end zone. So you feel confident in that high upside, but you got to be in a deep PPR league because these Cardinal wide receivers, we're not sure what you're going to get from them, and more so, you're not sure what Carson's going to be able to do because they're just not going to have a lot of time.
Don't play a tight end in either of the matchups. Stay away.
Stay away.
Start Charles Clay instead of anybody on this.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's a perfect example.
70%, 30% of leagues he's still available in. I can't say this enough. Charles Clay, I know it was earlier, but dear God, start Charles Clay and stop starting bad tight ends that can't score for you like Hunter Henry and Antonio Gates, some of these other guys.
Zach Ertz, your boy.
Oh, he's consistent. Top 5.
Also, we apologize in advance because one of these other Cardinals receivers is going to have a massive game.
Sure.
Yeah,
but good luck guessing who it is.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's like throwing a dart at a dartboard. I mean, you're just guessing at this point because you just don't know what. This offense could score 10 points today. They could score 35 points today.
For sure.
I have no read on what this team is going to be able to do. That's why
the people you feel confident in are Carson Palmer and Larry Fitzgerald because you know that Fitz is going to get the ball. Yep. Everybody else, throw it in a hat, pick one out, and maybe you'll find out who's going to have the big game. Now, Philadelphia going on the road to Los Angeles to play the Chargers. Now, are the Chargers, going to get a victory, finally? But let's look at this stat I have on Phillip Rivers.
You have a stat.
I love this stat about Phillip Rivers. All right. Since the start of 2016, Phillip Rivers finds his fantasy production jumps 30%. 30% in games in which he is a favorite. He's a 1.5-point favorite going into this game. 30% is a lot. 30% is a lot.
So what you're saying?
I'm saying Phillip Rivers
is going to bring, like Imagine Dragons, the Thunder.
Oh, boy. I knew he was going to try and bring it in, and I knew it was going to be a Chargers reference.
The what, Chris?
Yeah.
No, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, come on. You got to give it to the
I've
show.
lost all my energy. I'm not doing it.
You got to do it.
You lost the energy?
Nope, sorry.
In the middle of the show?
Sorry, it was a pre-show thing. You have to watch the pre-show. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Okay, Jamie, I'll let you. What do you think about Phillip Rivers this week? When I see a stat like that in a daily fantasy league where I know that he's very cheap, and in a 12-team league, in a 16-team league, you got to start Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, if you're a Phillip Rivers owner, it's so tough because he has so much ability and talent and the ability to put up 3 or 4 touchdowns any given week. But there's really almost no rhyme or reason to why he does and does not have success. Again, this is a decent matchup for him. But again, I don't know how you can feel super confident starting Phillip Rivers. Maybe in DFS because you have a cheap option if you're going with stars at the skill positions, but I don't know. I mean, that's an interesting stat, but I'm not confident. I've been burned by Rivers so much in the past that I just can't feel confident that he is a true 12 or 14 team must start at QB.
Eagles have allowed 2 straight top 12 quarterback performances, Alex Smith and Eli Manning. And
No
there's no
Fletcher Cox.
So I think if there's going to be a week to maybe play Phillip Rivers and hope that he turns things around, this would be the week. But yeah, I mean, with Phillip Rivers, you're going to get the turnovers, and you're just going to.
That's you got to live with it. It's like Carson.
You can be
Same
like,
thing.
Phil, can you not do that, buddy?
Yeah, I think he's going to be able to put up some numbers, mostly because of what I've seen from the Eagles and the fact that Fletcher Cox is not going to be there getting after the quarterback. Now, we look at Melvin Gordon, another guy in this offense who he hasn't been what you drafted him to be. He was projected in most leagues to be a top 3 running back, top 4 running back overall, and we haven't seen that yet. But what do you think about him this week in this play?
You have to play him, right? Because when you drafted him, to use Jamie's term, what did you say? Draft
capital.
Capital.
Draft
I almost said draft currency, but draft capital. To take a Melvin Gordon, because you drafted him probably as one of the top 10 running backs in your league. So you have a lot invested in him. You need him to play well. Now, he's producing more as of late. I worry about the play against the Eagles, who are good against the run, 3.8 yards per carry allowed. But again, no Fletcher Cox. Does that open up the opportunity for the running game? I think so. So I think you're comfortable playing Melvin Gordon. And if not,
also, I love this stat from, I found this unbelievable. So Roto World puts together these little nuggets every week. Yeah. When he is a favorite, so both Phillip Rivers and Melvin Gordon produces 24.8% more fantasy points when he's a favorite. You feel confident in those stats. Those are little nuggets that you don't really pay attention to. You got to do a deep dive. So shout out to Roto World for giving those stats. But that's where you drafted Melvin Gordon high. You got to start this guy. Yes. You got to start him. But other guys like Keenan Allen, Travis Benjamin, the tight ends here. What do you guys think about some of these guys?
I mean, Philadelphia, again, 12.1 pass attempts per game to #1 wide receivers. You're kind of waiting for that Keenan Allen breakout game that really just launches your season. Again, I think Tyrell Williams actually could have a big game. I know he's been quiet the last couple weeks. It feels like he's never talked about him. He had a strong season with Allen missing time last week. If Rivers is going to have the big game, I think you're going to have multiple wide receivers on not San Diego anymore. See, I always hit the San Diego Chargers still.
You don't call on the St. Louis Rams.
No.
You're really good at calling the Los Angeles Rams.
It's because they shouldn't have moved the team.
Well, it's also because I'm looking 2 years in the future when they're back in San Diego.
Yes, they're also going to be back in San Diego.
That's
maybe
generous.
next year.
They may be back in San Diego next year.
They're playing in a soccer stadium. Okay, that's all you need to know. A unique atmosphere that NFL Network keeps trying to tell us about.
It is unique.
Either you're buying into the Chargers offense this week or you're not. And if you are, you're starting Allen, you're starting Williams, and you're starting Rivers. And you're always starting Gordon because I don't believe you're going to have 2 other running backs on your roster that are worthy of playing over him this week.
And let me tell you something about the tight ends here. All right, Philadelphia is allowing 61.3 yards per game to tight ends in 2017. Just don't buy into, if you're going to start one here, you start Antonio Gates. Hunter Henry didn't even have any targets in 2 of the 3 games that he's played thus far.
What was that about Hunter Henry?
Yeah, he hasn't had any targets.
Yeah, Hunter Henry,
no
not
targets, not even the ball thrown his way. So if you are going to start somebody because you look at that matchup and you go, okay, Philadelphia gives up a lot of points and a lot of yards to tight ends, the guy's Antonio Gates still until otherwise proven because obviously they don't feel comfortable or their new coach is not throwing the ball towards Hunter Henry at all, which is very confusing to watch, but you gotta let that play out, and you're definitely not starting Hunter Henry.
On the Eagles side of things, Wendell Smallwood's going to be the guy now.
With
Darren Sproles tearing his ACL and
breaking his arm all in the same play. Yeah, that was rough.
If that was me,
I'd be dead.
I'm not getting up.
No, ever again.
Not just laying there on the floor. You'd have to do the outline with the tape and I'm not moving.
All over. Also, the other thing to look at here is the Chargers have allowed the most fantasy points to this position in 2017. So you feel good about starting Smallwood maybe this week because you can go out and get him. You're not sure where you're going to get yet because they were trying to make Sproles the guy. But this is a guy who you could probably pick up. You probably put in a flex spot or in a daily fantasy league. You're going to get pretty cheap.
Yeah, and I think the jury is still out on Wendell Smallwood being the option for this team. I still think they're trying to figure out what their running game really is. But yes, it appears as though now Wendell Smallwood is going to be the guy they're going to give the carries to. So I'll use the term that I like to use. Keep an eye on Wendell Smallwood.
All right, and the last one here we're going to get into, we'll get Philadelphia-wise. So we look other than Smallwood, Alshon Jeffrey, Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz. Some of these players that are Zach Ertz, I love. Okay, I'm going to continue to say this. Until he proves that he's not a top 10 tight end every week, which he has been, you need to start Zach Ertz. And I'll back that up with the stats because I know Chris over here is a hater of Zach Ertz. And he's sipping the haterade and he needs to go away because has received double-digit targets in last 10 games. What does that mean for a tight end? That is great because tight ends hardly ever see that production unless you're like Rob Gronkowski or Travis Kelce. So you feel very confident about Zach Ertz. He found his way into the end zone. This is a guy you got to start. You got to start every week in the tight end position because this has been a horrible year. The tight end position is usually that you feel awful about it 3 weeks in, but Zach Ertz is a guy you got to start. Is Alshon Jeffrey or Carson Wentz specifically this week? There are two guys that are kind of on the fringe. Do you feel confident starting either one of those?
Yeah,
guys?
I think you're playing both.
Yeah, I think you're playing both. I think the breakout for Jeffrey's coming. He leads the Philadelphia wide receivers in targets. I think we've seen his talents on display before. I think the production is going to start to come again as you start to look early in the season. I know Philadelphia fans don't want to hear this, but you're looking at the process. More than the results right away early in the season, and the process
tells to Joel Embiid.
And the process tells me that Alshon Jeffrey will continue to be a very productive fantasy receiver as you get into the latter 2/3 of the season.
All right, guys, I got a question for the next matchup. That's New York Giants going to Tampa Bay. This one's very interesting. I got a lot of questions.
Am I interesting? Do you mean weird? Because it's certainly
that's what
weird.
I mean by weird. I got a couple of questions, but Ross on Twitter sent me a question about Eli Manning and my confidence in Eli Manning. Jamie, I'll go to you first, and what your confidence is in Eli Manning, then we'll all go around and say what our. It's like a grieving thing here. So, Jamie, you go first.
1 to 10, your confidence in Eli Manning this week.
Do they make numbers lower than like 0?
They do. They're negatives.
So, okay, so this is where we have to. I'm being facetious. You have to separate the real life quarterback from the fantasy quarterback here. I would say I'm about a 4 out of 10 on Eli Manning. He's got the pieces around him that are conducive to having fantasy success.
That's a big word.
The problem is, it's not that big of a word.
No, I couldn't spell it right now. So.
Well, that's not a surprise. Wait, we have the same education. I was going to make fun of
him. They both went to ASU. Just so we're taking shots here.
He has the pieces around him that's conducive to success, but he will also kill you with his turnovers. Again, he's a high upside play every week. He has the ability to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns, getting Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard and others involved. But I can't say any week that I feel like I'm going to be, I'm excited. I've got Eli Manning in my lineup this week. Not happening. I said no one ever.
Chris, your feelings on Eli Manning?
I want to see if I can disguise this. I'm a little bit more confident than Jamie. I'll put it at a 6 out of 10 on the confidence meter for Eli Manning this week because, look, the Bucs have allowed 300 passing yards in each of their first 2 games this season. They're coming off a game where Odell Beckham Jr. finally had the breakout. Sterling Shepard finally had the breakout. Maybe they're starting to find themselves together as a team in terms of their offense. So I'm a little bit more confident, but man, they can't protect Eli Manning, and that worries me.
Yeah, that's a for sure thing. I like that you brought up the fact that the Bucs defense has allowed 300 passing yards, and that would include Case Keenum. Okay, so let's just keep that. And the other thing here is with the Buccaneers, they have some big injuries on defense. So that defense isn't what it's projected to be because they've suffered some pretty bad injuries. And Jameis Winston continues to make some of these bad Jameis mistakes that lead to opportunities for this offense. So I think it's going to be an interesting play. Do I feel confident starting Eli? I'm probably at about a 5. He's not a guy in a 2 quarterback league. Yeah, sure, I'll play Eli, but you can't just let that 1 week of above average Eli erase the last 2 games and then the last 7 games before that in last season because in fantasy he was not a top 12 quarterback in the last 9 weeks of football. So you can't play him.
I trust New York's playmakers on the pass catching side more than I trust Eli Manning
for
himself.
Sure.
Odell Beckham, obviously you don't need us to tell you to start him.
Really?
Sterling Shepard's going to be a very strong play again this week. And there's a kind of a deep flex play I hear that you have, Paige, that you might, if you're desperate, maybe in a very deep league.
Are you doing what I think you're doing? You're going with Brandon Marshall?
No.
Oh.
I like them all. Actually, I like everybody this week on New York. So here's some stats for you, okay? Tampa Bay is allowing 69 yards receiving per game to running backs. So this
You're doing this again.
This is a
PPR
alert for Shane Vereen.
Stop trying to make Shane Vereen a thing. He's not a thing.
I'm just looking at the matchups. I'm not looking at the names. I'm just looking at the matchups. Sterling Shepard, a strong flex option this week. Okay, this is a very strong flex option this week. Why? The Giants are trying to get the ball out of Manning's hands a lot quicker. Okay, they're trying to solve some of these problems.
Yeah.
He's the primary target for the number 2 slot receiver, and the Buccaneers are averaging 75 yards given up to that slot position. So I like Sterling Shepard this week. Brandon Marshall, I'm not starting until otherwise known.
Okay, Shep went for 7 for 133 and a touchdown?
Yeah.
That'll work. in your flex
That'll
spot.
work. I like
That'll do.
That plays.
That plays.
That plays.
I think he had 31.3 fantasy points last week in a PPR league. I think you'll take that. Stop trying to make Shane Vereen a thing, Paige.
I'm not trying to make Shane Vereen
a
thing.
This
no,
is
I'm
for
not.
2 weeks now. You've tried to talk me into playing Shane Vereen.
No.
Shane Vereen is so
I don't
fetch.
remember ever saying that.
I'm not
going
to allow you to tell the
in a
viewers here.
PPR league. I'm just giving you the numbers. You can do with it what you like.
Jameis Winston, who I put all of my stock in as a fantasy quarterback this year.
Tell us Chris, how do you feel about feeling that confident about Jameis Winston now?
Jameis Winston is going to ride the bench for the next couple of weeks.
Oh, he's going to ride the bench.
The Giants held Matt Stafford and Carson Wentz to a combined 298 yards over the last 2 weeks.
You're welcome for that nugget.
Yeah, that's your nugget. And I have Matt Stafford in fantasy, and I played Matt Stafford the week that he went against the Giants. Much better than anything I could have expected out of Jameis.
For sure.
Jameis is struggling. And I'm going to make a comparison that I know some people have made in the past, and it seems a little weird at times. Jameis Winston is like Brett Favre. He just tries to hero ball it. He tries to make plays happen.
Very true.
And a byproduct of that is he throws 100 interceptions a game. That's close. I rounded a little bit.
Approximately.
100 interceptions
Give or
a
take.
game.
I think he threw 3 last week. That's not going to work in fantasy, especially when you're not getting in the end zone. They struggled a whole lot last week. So, Jameis, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Jameis is riding the pine here for the next couple
You know
days.
who I do like for Tampa Bay this week? Take a guess.
Are you going to try to make Jaquiz Rodgers a thing?
Oh, I'm not. He is a thing.
Oh.
You want to know why? The Giants allowed 193 rushing yards to Philadelphia last week.
Okay.
For those counting at home, that's a lot. Okay, that's a lot. And here's the thing: if you drafted Jaquiz Rodgers, this is the last week you're feeling confident starting him because Doug Martin comes back next week. So if you have Jaquiz Rodgers, you drafted him to be the guy. This is your only week left. You only got this week, and then next week you're like, okay, well, I got to figure this out.
And we talked about this on Thursday. People are looking at the numbers for him: 5 carries, 15 yards, and they're panicking.
No, that was an awful game.
Tampa Bay was down in that game. They have to throw the football. They're
Yes.
not running the ball because they don't want to kill the clock. So it's just context. Context matters with these
He's
things.
He's a flex play for
Agreed,
sure.
agreed.
I'm not starting.
No.
He's not an RB1 or an RB2
No.
for me. But this is a guy who you could start in a flex position and end up getting very, very much high upside this week. So you feel very confident doing that.
Mike Evans?
I mean, you have to. But
He's fine.
I mean, he's
He
going to
went
be
for
fine.
7 for 67. He didn't have a touchdown.
Yeah, that's a problem. But the Giants are allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season. So I'm not feeling really
I don't feel
good.
great.
You
but
can't
you
sit
of
Mike
course
Evans.
you can't.
I'm not saying
Don't
you
tell
don't-
me I can't
Also-
do it.
Here's the thing. I have Mike Evans. I know you have Mike Evans, or
Yes.
you used to have Mike Evans. I'm not sitting Mike Evans, but this is where I know where I'm looking at a Rodgers and I'm going, I need to make a decision to put a higher upside guy in my flex spot and take a little risk because my guy who usually puts up big numbers is probably not going to have in the 20s. Mike
need
Evans
some
is probably not
options.
going to score 20 points this week because the Giants' defense is actually pretty good. So this is where you got to make one of those decisions and go, okay, I need a flex position guy with higher upside. It might turn and bite you, but that's the only way you're going to win.
Yeah, temper expectations for Mike Evans. If you want a high upside play, Deshaun Jackson's a Giants killer.
For sure.
Caught a touchdown 2 straight weeks now. Again, the Giants are very good against wide receivers this year, but if you want a high upside play, for tight ends, if you're Tampa Bay, stay away.
Stay away.
If you listen to anybody but Chris early in the season, they let you know that O.J. Howard wasn't going to be a thing in the pass catching game this year. If you have to start a tight end, it's Cameron Brate, and you're praying for a touchdown, but just stay away.
Is Deshaun Jackson good for a punt return in this game? He did that against the Giants to win a game, walk-off punt return.
He might, but that's not something you can predict.
No, I'm just asking.
That's it. I mean, he's a flex play for me in a
Yeah.
PPR league. Probably you feel pretty good about that. But this is another. This feels like another weird one because Tampa Bay's coming off a very bad loss in Minnesota. They're back home, and you're not sure what the Giants are. You're just not sure what they are yet. You look at them and you're
no, I think I know what they are.
bad. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
they're pretty bad.
Yikes.
All right, let's
Yikes.
move in. Let's move into this game, which I'm very excited about. A lot to pay attention to defensively and offensively. This is where these fantasy players, you're going to see some really good and some really bad that you're not used to. So, Oakland Raiders at Denver Broncos. Let's kick things off with the Denver Broncos defense. Okay, this is an unbelievable stat. They're allowing less than 60 yards per game. That is the fewest in the league. You want to take a guess at who those games were against?
They played the not San Diego Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers.
So they played Melvin Gordon.
Yep. They played LaShawn McCoy
and Ezekiel
Ezekiel
Elliott.
Elliott.
Are those three guys that you would consider elite running backs?
No, they're all overrated, I think,
Yeah.
in my estimation.
So under 60 yards
who are
to
those
all
guys?
three of those guys. What does that mean? What does that mean? a big fat no start to Marshawn Lynch. Do not tweet me about it. Do not ask me about it. I'm swiping
left.
I'm swiping him away. Do not start Marshawn Lynch this week because do I need to tell you anything else? Those 3 running backs he shut down, and Marshawn still hasn't been very good this far.
I think what's been more impressive.
You can't start him this week. No starting.
I think what's more
Don't
impressive
tweet me about it.
Is last year, Denver's run defense wasn't good.
No.
Complete
change of philosophy.
That number was double.
They were
last year.
28th in the league.
Yeah, it was like 125 yards a game.
Yep.
Now they've gotten it down to 60. Now again, sample size.
For sure.
3 games. But again, to your point, look at the running backs they did it against. Marshawn Lynch is not Ezekiel Elliott.
No.
He is not LaShawn McCoy. He is not Melvin Gordon. He is not those running backs. So I agree with Paige. This is a bad matchup for Marshawn Lynch
this is a nightmare if you own Oakland Raiders players. There is one startable Oakland Raider in standard leagues.
Yeah,
one.
Let's start off with Derek Carr here. So I got some numbers. In his 5 career matchups, 183 yards, only 183 yards of passing. 1.2 touchdowns and an interception a game, okay? He didn't handle the pressure at all last week. He's on the road again in Denver. This is where I look at a Derek Carr and I go, okay, if you have a Derek Carr, who do I feel more confident starting this week? Trevor Siemian. I'm starting Trevor Siemian over Derek Carr this week.
Tyrod Taylor.
Maybe as long as we stick to our gimmicks.
A Derek Carr that we're used to in the first couple of weeks, you're loving on that offense. Marshawn Lynch and Derek Carr for me are not guys I'm feeling confident starting.
So here, the trickle-down effect. Are you playing Amari Cooper?
We got some stats here. Let's show Cooper and Crabtree. In 4 games together versus Denver, Cooper and Crabtree average a combined together 7.3 receptions for 72 yards per game with 1 touchdown. 1 total touchdown and 7 receptions between 2 guys.
And do you know what makes that even worse?
I think Jamie's going to make the same joke I'm going to make.
The best receiver of the 2 is not going to play today.
That wasn't the joke I was going to make.
I
was going to ask if
What's your joke? Bring
my joke is going to be if that was one fantasy player, those numbers,
those
are fine.
Yeah.
No, 7 catches,
in 1
73 yards,
but
and a touchdown?
But not 4 games.
No, for 1 game, that would be fine.
Yeah.
That's 4 games worth of statistics. That's
for
not
2
good.
guys.
For 2 guys. That's not good.
Yeah, I mean, Amari Cooper's a flex play. Unless you get extra points in your league for drop passes, then he's a wide receiver 1.
Zing! Jamie's got the zingers
Cooper's a flex
today.
play. That's it. I'm not starting any other Oakland Raider in a standard league. Again, if you have Carr, Siemian, start him. Start Tyrod Taylor. Start Carson Palmer. All these quarterbacks we've talked about before. Not Cam Newton, though. All these quarterbacks we talked about before over Derek Carr. This is a bad matchup for them.
Yeah, here's the one thing I'm paying attention to is Jared Cook. Because Denver's ranked 25th against tight ends this year, okay? So he's a decent option.
Yeah, Witten had some success against them as well.
He's had 5+ targets in the last couple of weeks, and they've allowed the 5th most points to tight ends. So you look at that and you go, okay, if they're not going to be able to get the ball to Marshawn Lynch, and they're not going to be getting the ball to Cooper and Crabtree, who's going to be in those kind of dink and dunks short passes? It's probably going to be the tight end, Jared Cook. So I don't love it, but if you're in a tight end league where this year you're throwing darts trying to figure out who's going to be good, this is a guy that you might start this week.
So it's not a lock and load for you.
No, it's not a lock and load. My lock and load is that you don't start Marshawn Lynch. Like, if you tweet at me and you tell me you started Marshawn, I'm going to mock you.
That's on
and you will be on Your Team Sucks. Like, guaranteed. If you want a one-way ticket to Your Team Sucks, start Marshawn Lynch this week. That's a one-way ticket. No, one-way, no round trip. You don't get to come back. That's a one-way ticket.
Pay your own way home.
All right, Trevor Siemian. Let's talk a little bit about why we liked him this week.
You have to play Trevor Siemian. I can't believe these words are coming out. You have to play Trevor Siemian. He's thrown for 2 touchdowns in each of his last 2 games against the Raiders. The Raiders' passing defense is still a lot to be desired at this point. He's got the trust of his wide receivers. He's not turning the ball over. Out of the 2 in this matchup, I think Trevor Siemian's the better play.
Their defense, the Raiders' defense is allowing over 250 yards of passing with 5 touchdowns and no interceptions thus far in 2017. Those are pretty confident numbers, especially when you look at what plays into Trevor Siemian's strengths.
Yep.
He hasn't been turning the ball over. Mm-hmm. He is giving you those running plays, okay? He's making some points with his legs. And this Oakland Raiders defense on the road, you saw what happened to them in Washington, and I like this offense more in total than I do like Washington's offense.
Yeah, I think this is just a bad matchup for the Raiders who need to play. These are both teams coming off a bad loss the week prior. Mm-hmm. They're both wanting to play better. Denver has the advantage with the defense. They're going to have the home crowd. And I think what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to use the running game to really balance out and really put some pressure on Oakland. So I think you look at C.J. Anderson, you look at Jamal Charles as good plays this week. Charles maybe a flex play, maybe a daily play.
He did get in the end zone.
He did get in the end zone, but C.J. Anderson's the guy there. He's going to get all the touches. He's going to be the guy that's the cowbell, the workhorse there.
And I will give you this. So Oakland has not allowed a running back to rush for over 53 yards in a game yet, but they were exposed by a running back in the air, and that was Chris Thompson. So if you're in a PPR league,
comes back to burn me again.
Yeah, if you're in a PPR league, you feel confident about a guy like maybe C.J. Anderson and Jamal Charles who can catch the ball as well, because Oakland has had a lot of trouble with that, specifically with Chris Thompson last week.
Sanders has been really solid.
Yep.
Demaryius Thomas is always a big play threat, but I mean, is Demaryius Thomas, is he allowed in the end zone?
Him and Julio Jones, apparently,
there's
just
an outlaw
for whatever reason.
No
restraining order at the end zone.
They've been banned from going in the end zone.
I love that line, restraining order.
Yeah, and they're just not allowed in. I don't know what it is. Demaryius Thomas can't catch a touchdown. When was his? Well, I mean, he hasn't caught a touchdown against Oakland since. Is this right? Week 17 of the 2013 season.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's what, 6 games? 7 games?
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a long time ago for Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah, that's not looking pretty. I think both of those guys you feel pretty good about a flex position
You're gonna
for
play
either
them,
one of those guys.
But you need Demaryius to get in the end zone to feel comfortable with him playing.
Yeah, he hasn't been obviously not the same guy without Peyton Manning, and no, that's to be understandable. All right, Indianapolis Colts at the Seattle Seahawks. The Seattle Seahawks offensively show you a little bit more last week for the first time thus far this season. Now, C.J. Prosise goes out. Carson is going to be the running back there. Russell Wilson shows for the first time this year that he can be an upside fantasy play. Other than that, Doug Baldwin has an injury, so you're worried about that. So what does this mean for the other players here offensively, and who do you feel confident starting? Because Indianapolis' defense has been a little bit better than people are giving them credit for.
So with Doug Baldwin, when the phrase used, he's going to give it a go.
He's not playing today.
He's not playing.
I don't care if he is playing. That's not inspiring.
He's not
confidence.
playing today.
We're going to give it a go.
I'm going to look up the latest right now.
Because give it a go was the phrase that was used last night, and that scared me greatly. You cannot play Doug Baldwin.
Baldwin, yeah, I don't think Doug Baldwin is going to play today.
Very iffy is what Schefter said.
He's not playing.
Yeah, I don't feel good about that.
You have to have somebody else in your lineup in an early game. That you're not waiting for Richardson or Lockett. You're waiting for, you got to go somebody that plays in the early game.
Yeah.
This is your opportunity. You have 45 minutes before the rest of the game start. There's guys out there. We've talked about a bunch of them. Rashard Matthews. What is he owned in 33% of leagues?
Yeah.
I mean, he's available. Pick that guy up. He's a much better play than Doug Baldwin is this week.
Well, Doug Baldwin's not going to give you a big fat zero.
And Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett, their snaps are going to increase, and Paul Richardson has scored in each of the last 2 weeks, but I just don't know if you're going to see that much of a boost in the offense with Doug Baldwin out. So here's your opportunity. You got about 45 minutes till game start. There are options out there.
And here's the last thing with Jimmy Graham here, because I know people have tried to make Jimmy Graham a thing ever since he left, and he hasn't been a thing. He did catch 7 passes last week after catching 4 through 2 weeks the previous 2 weeks. So without Doug Baldwin, stay with me, Jimmy Graham could be a very good play this week just because we haven't seen a lot of good stuff with tight ends. And if you drafted Jimmy Graham, you probably drafted him too high, so you got to start him. I mean, you got to start him. And unless you can go get a Charles Clay or somebody who's available, you got to start Jimmy Graham. And if it's any week, it's this week that he breaks out.
Yeah.
I mean,
you have to. I don't feel confident about Jimmy Graham. I haven't been a Jimmy Graham guy since he left New Orleans. They don't use him the same way in Seattle. They've never used him the same way. I don't think they have any intention of using him the same way. So his name value is always going to be greater than his actual fantasy value. But if there were a week based off last week, based off Baldwin probably not playing, you kind of got to start him.
So here's a stat that I had to read it twice. Okay, so this is where we've made fun of Frank Gore on other shows.
We will probably make fun of Frank Gore right now.
The Seahawks are one of 2 teams to allow a top 12 fantasy back performance in each of their games this season. Okay, so that means every running back that has played against the Seattle Seahawks thus far this season has finished in the top 12. So if you are looking at Indianapolis, I know that you're not. Jacoby Brissett is not going to have. He had a pretty decent week last week.
Jacoby.
Do not start Jacoby Brissett on the road in Seattle. The only person here from Indianapolis that you might be looking at in a flex play because of what they're going to have to do. Now, I do think they're going to be behind, but I do think that Frank Gore might be a flex position play here only because Seattle's defense against the run has been very poor, which is not like Seattle.
Yeah, and Frank Gore hasn't been very efficient, but he's been productive. And ultimately, you really don't care about efficiency in fantasy football. You just want to see what the numbers look like at the end of the day. And again, he could fall into the end zone today.
For sure. He could fall.
Fall into the
He could
end zone.
fall. He could find himself in the end zone.
Into the end zone.
What do you guys feel? What are you guys thinking about Chris Carson? Because I've gotten a lot. I think everyone's continuing to try and pay attention to the Seattle offense. I think people remember this offense 2 years ago with Marshawn Lynch and what they were, and they're trying to make that running back into a fantasy production-wise what Marshawn was. Stop doing that because it's never going to happen. But Chris Carson's production has gone up every week, and he is going to be the guy this week. He's not going to split with C.J. Procise because Procise is injured. So what do you think about Chris Carson this week?
The snaps tell me he's the guy. I mean, even when Procise was on the field last week, Carson got 41 snaps, Procise got 27.
Yep.
So they're trying to establish him as the guy, and I think he's the most talented back of the bunch. You just got to ask yourself what you think the productivity is going to be from this Seattle offensive line to allow them to create holes for the running game. Carson's very good at being able to create holes on his own. He's able to get to the outside pretty well and pick up 3-4 yards on a play that maybe looks to be a broken play. So I think Chris Carson's a good flex play, maybe a running back 2 play. But other than that, you just got to see it on a more consistent basis before you're comfortable.
And I know something that people were asking about was Jack Doyle from the tight end position because he did have a good week against Arizona. Seattle is allowing just 46 yards per game to tight ends, and they're ranked in the top 5 against tight ends, so that's not something you're feeling great about. Indianapolis, on the other side, against tight ends, is ranked 26th. So back to Jimmy Graham again. This is where if Jimmy Graham's going to break out or have a game,
this is the matchup.
This has got to be the game. And
no
if
Doug
it's not,
Baldwin, Indy defense not good against tight ends.
Yeah,
it is the recipe for Jimmy Graham to have a good game, and if he doesn't, you said this last week when we talked about Eric Decker.
He's going.
Eric Decker's game was last week, right? No Corey Davis, here's your chance. You don't show up, you're out. I think that's the case with Jimmy Graham. If Jimmy Graham does not show up this week for you in your fantasy league, you got to look elsewhere.
Yeah, and just to kind of steal Chris's gimmick, keep an eye on J.D. McKissic. I want to see how he is used, particularly on passing downs in Seattle's offense, and see if there's any traction there. You're obviously not starting him this week, but
no, but he's a guy you go put him on your bench maybe. And this is how you win. This is how you win leagues. This is how you win leagues. All right, the last game here, Monday Night Football. The Washington Redskins going on the road to play the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a lot here. Washington had a huge week last week against Oakland, which was not expected. Maybe this Washington Redskins offense is finally kind of coming together, cooperating. Kirk Cousins is feeling more comfortable. But I'm not starting Kirk Cousins this week, and I'll tell you why. He's playing the Kansas City Chiefs defense on the road. Do not expect him to come back and have the week he had last week. Oakland Raiders defense is not the Kansas City Chiefs defense, and they are on the road. And they are not going to – the last week they were so hyped for that game, and I think there's going to be a huge letdown on Monday night.
Could not agree more. I am scared to death of putting a quarterback going into Arrowhead against that defense.
On Monday night.
Oof. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck, Kirk Cousins owners.
So let's talk about Chris Thompson, because we've talked a lot about how much. Mostly I like to talk about this because, let's see, I'm going to flip this to like 100, the most I can possibly flip it to. Okay, we're going to keep it going. Okay, to 9.
I think you can get it to 9.
Okay?
Just shy of 100.
You want to know why? Yeah, okay. No, there's nothing.
No, I'm going to get you some more points.
So you want to know why we're doing this? Because Chris Thompson was a guy who has ended up being top 5 production-wise overall in fantasy. Chris Schubert. Not a couple of weeks ago. Who is Chris Thompson?
Yep. I did.
Who is Chris Thompson?
I said it.
So, Chris, why don't you tell the folks?
Who is Chris Thompson?
Chris Thompson. Who is Chris Thompson?
He's pretty
good.
The
people.
Averaging 9 touches per game this year, getting close to 7 targets out of the backfield. But this is a tough matchup for him against this Chiefs defense because the Chiefs have the 5th-ranked pass DVOA, which is one of my favorite advanced statistics for football, against running backs and are allowing just about 37 yards per game to the pass-catching back. So if this is where I'm not going to diminish Chris Thompson because he's had a really good season so far, but here's the thing. If Chris Thompson is going to become a legit fantasy option, this is the game where he breaks out, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure I see a full breakout. I'm very much like he has a decent game because he's going to catch some passes, but I don't think he's going to have the game he had last week.
Here's the thing. You guys got to know a little bit what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Chris,
there's just laughter going on over here.
I'm dying, and I'm trying not to laugh on Mike because Chris is doing this.
We're trying to put it on a production over here, and the
Chris,
behind the scenes.
For one more time, how do you feel about Chris Thompson? Show the people how he feels. That's a live reaction of how Chris feels about his what? Who is Chris Thompson just a few weeks ago? But Chris, this is a week where you might be justified because the Kansas City defense is one of the best. This is going to be a tough matchup for him. But if you are, the thing with what Thompson has done week in and week out, you're starting him. He's not an RB1. He's not an RB2. You drafted him, and he was a bench guy. And now you're putting him on your flex play. This is where I talked about earlier. If you have a guy like Mike Evans, who's your number 1 wide receiver, and you're like, this is a bad matchup for my guy, Chris Thompson is a guy with high upside. He continues to show they know that Jay Gruden is not going to give him overproduction. He's going to give him just the right amount of touches. And although I love Kansas City's defense, I think somebody's going to have at least a mediocre week, and it's probably going to be Chris Thompson. You guys agree? Chris wants to kill me. No, Chris is very upset. I embarrassed him live on the show. You want to talk about the Chiefs? Let's talk about the Chiefs, Chris.
Let's talk about the Chiefs.
Let's talk about the Chiefs.
The Chiefs are good at fantasy football. I did not think.
Here's the
Let's
thing.
start with Alex Smith. Chris, I'll let you start.
He is good. I mean, look, the Redskins have allowed a total of 342 yards and 2 touchdowns over the last two contests, intercepting 3 passes in those games. I mean, look, you got to ask yourself, Alex Smith doesn't turn the ball over, right? So you have some confidence in him to be able to get the ball to his playmakers, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, let them do the rest of the work. Alex Smith's a play. I mean, I don't care. I think at this point in the season, despite maybe what the Redskins have been able to do against quarterbacks, you still have confidence in this Chiefs offense. Can't believe I'm saying that. But I'm playing Alex Smith this week.
This is where we go to Kareem Hunt, okay? Now, Kareem Hunt has been one of those guys that we've talked about at length because we love what he's been able to do. The Redskins are allowing just 3.6 yards per carry, but what you do like is that they're allowing 18 receptions, an average of 18 receptions to a running back, and 129 yards. This is where you look at Kareem Hunt and you go, okay, he might not get the touches in the backfield that you want, but he is going to be utilized in that offense. So don't overthink this. Don't not start Kareem Hunt because Washington had a really good week last week and they shut down Oakland's offense. This is a total Kansas City team, and what's going to happen here is that the better team is going to be on the field more. They're at home. They have the home field advantage, and you got to start these guys. And I can't believe I'm saying it, but Alex Smith is a must start at this point. He is. He's a must start in fantasy for what he's been able to do, and I can't believe we're there, where Alex Smith is a good fantasy quarterback, but he is.
You look at the Chiefs, don't overthink this. You're starting Hunt, you're starting Hill, you're starting Kelce, you're starting Smith.
Yep.
And that's it. And all 4 will be very productive this week. Although, to give the Redskins credit, they are playing decent defense. They're playing a lot better than I think a lot of people expected. However, you are starting your Kansas City playmakers because they will all get plenty of work on Monday night.
Here's the last stat that I love. Travis Kelce should have a huge week. The Redskins are one of 4 teams to give up a top 12 fantasy tight end performance in each of their weeks thus far. So this means good things for Travis Kelce. I think they're going to try and shut down Tyreek Hill. So what does that mean? Travis Kelce's going to get a lot of the touches. He's going to get a lot of those passes. And I expect big things offensively from all these guys, specifically Kareem Hunt and Travis Kelce. We'll get into the last part of the show. We're going to do a couple of questions here, guys.
Whoa. You can't let him off the hook. You can't let him off the hook.
I was going to let him off the hook, but go ahead.
He picked Stephon Diggs last week for Haters Gonna Hate. He's got to pick another one. You can't just let him get away with that. I gave him. I mean, we did the Minnesota contest earlier, and I had to talk about Stephon Diggs.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, Jamie.
So,
Haters Gonna Hate live on the show.
I've learned my lesson. I took a star wide receiver that I thought wasn't going to be productive. So I've learned my lesson.
You're doubling down.
So Haters Gonna Hate. Don't start T.Y. Hilton this week. This is very simple. The Seahawks are allowing only 65.7 yards per game to number 1 wide receivers. This is also the simple logic part. Are you going to start a wide receiver that's going up against that Seahawks secondary in Seattle on Sunday night in a game the Seahawks really feel like they need to win? You're not.
No,
I don't buy
not
last
happening.
week. Seattle's not the Browns. Do not start T.Y. Hilton this week.
All right.
No, hold on.
Everybody
do it with me.
T.Y. incomplete.
T.Y.
Incomplete pass. An incomplete
Drop
pass. All right. Lock of the week this week. I told you one of my locks is not starting Marshawn Lynch because you got to respect the Denver defense. In that game again, my lock of the week because I looked on both DraftKings and FanDuel ahead of time.
You got a daily lock of the week.
I got a daily lock of the week, and that is Trevor Siemian. You want to know why? He's extremely cheap. He's got a lot of high upside, and the Raiders have given up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. What does that mean? Lock and load, people.
Oh, man.
Lock and load Trevor Siemian this week. I'm loving him. He has been exactly what you need him to be. And when you look at a daily fantasy play that's very cheap with a lot of high upside, that is Trevor Siemian. So he's the lock and load this week, guys.
Do you have any Twitter questions for us to go through here?
Why do you sound so unenthusiastic?
Here's the thing.
Do you have any Twitter questions?
This is where I
killed
I can't be bothered to talk to the people.
No, that's not.
I can't. I'm Christopher Schubert.
Well, you should know because you gave them bad advice last week. I don't want to give out
At least
bad
I give advice.
Okay,
At least I help.
let's get into some of these
Yeah.
questions. We're going to get to,
All right.
okay, we got about 7 minutes here, so we'll get into a couple of questions. So This one comes from Brandon on Twitter, and he wants to know Pryor or Watkins for wide receiver this week in a PPR league. Terrell Pryor has been a huge frustration this far in fantasy. Huge frustration. So do you guys
Are we in agreement on this?
I don't know if we are.
Are you taking Sammy Watkins?
This is so funny. They're looking into each other's eyes trying to make a decision. I love it.
How do you feel about Sammy Watkins, Chris?
I'm taking Sammy Watkins this week because I think that Rams
why are you
offense.
Taking him?
I think that Rams offense is hitting another gear right now.
Okay.
I look at Dallas, and they don't have the secondary that they did a year ago, and Jared Goff's getting them the ball. I mean, Watkins caught 2 touchdowns last week. I don't know if he has that big of a performance, but I think Terrell Pryor is still trying to find himself in this Washington offense, and in a PPR league, Watkins is going to get the ball early and often.
Yeah, I think Watkins is just a better bet to get more production, more touchdowns. I think Pryor will figure it out, but right now the receiver I want in Washington is Doxson.
All right, this one comes from Josh on Twitter. He wants to know, in a PPR league, you get to play 2.
Okay.
So you got Garcon, you got Powell, you got Rashard Matthews, and you got Sterling Shepard.
Okay, this is easy.
I'll repeat. Garcon, Powell, Rashard Matthews, Sterling Shepard. All right, to the boys.
Are we in agreement on this?
I think so.
Is it Rashard Matthews
and Sterling Shepard?
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are the easy two.
I
wanted to just do the 1, 2, 3 thing, but you were going to go right away.
I didn't know what number. I didn't know what.
Yeah, I would say first. Again, feel confident starting those 2 receivers, basically for the reasons we said earlier on the show.
Yeah.
They're going to be productive. They've shown that they can be productive.
High upside in those positions, especially in a PPR league. All right, 3 wide receivers here to choose from in a PPR league.
Like 12 names here.
Calvin Benjamin, Rashard Matthews, Dez, and Amari Cooper. Of those 4, you got to take one out. So
I immediately had Rashard Matthews. And then it was the second one is bad.
That's tough.
So Calvin Benjamin, Rashard Matthews, Dez Bryant, and Amari Cooper. That's a pretty stacked foursome. But this week is not great for, first of all, Calvin Benjamin's injured.
So I have it down to 2.
See, I would take Benjamin out of that, but I know you. But if Cam Newton's going to score 1,000 points like you think he is, then he's going to go to somebody.
And that's the problem. That's the concern that I have is because I think Cam's going to have a good week, which makes me want to pick Calvin Benjamin. But Amari Cooper.
I might take Amari Cooper out.
Yeah, I think I'm going Rashard Matthews and Amari Cooper. I think that's.
No, you only got to take out one.
We're going to take out 1.
3.
You're starting 3 of those 4.
You got 3 of those 4.
See, if you listen to the questions, Chris.
Oh, I thought I was only starting 2.
See, if you don't talk before Paige finishes the question.
Oh, that changes everything.
It's like Jeopardy when you just buzz in with the wrong answer.
Yeah, then I think it's easy. I'll take Cooper, Matthews, and Calvin Benjamin.
So you're
taking out Dez.
I'll take out Dez.
Okay. Yeah. Jamie, who are you taking out?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kelvin Benjamin, but I'm worried about Dez. But I'm worried about sitting him as well. I'm going to take Benjamin out because I don't think Cam Newton has this great game that Chris has made up in his head.
This one comes from Tara. Tara is thinking about dropping some guys in her league to pick up Andre Ellington in a PPR league.
No.
I don't know how. I don't even need the guys for this one.
No.
Okay. This is a big fat no, nope. Tara. Okay. The Cardinals do not know what they're doing with their running backs. And Andre Ellington, let's look at the past 5 years of his seasons. He always gets injured. And now he has to be the featured back. Do not get Andre Ellington. Do not pick him up. This isn't the guy. You shouldn't be dropping anybody. And in this question, it looks like you're trying to drop Ezekiel Elliott for Andre Ellington. I'm questioning whether you should be playing fantasy football. That's where I am right now. I'm there. Would you guys, would you agree?
Sorry, there was a development while you were going on that Andre Ellington rant.
Okay.
It appears... And I'm doubling and tripling down on this Cam Newton thing now.
No.
It appears he is on the field, warming up in Timberlands.
Negative points.
All of the fantasy points for Cam Newton this week.
He goes negative today. That's what's going to happen.
He's walking down like Times
This is
Square.
awful. This is so bad. All right, the last question here comes from Rob. Melvin Gordon or Chris Hogan in a PPR league this week. Hashtag fantasy football. Hashtag please help me. I love that.
Gordon,
please help him.
I would say Gordon.
Yeah.
I would say don't overthink this. I understand the upside that Hogan could have, especially in a PPR league, and that Gordon is not exactly a huge pass-catching back out of the backfield, but you got to go with the more talented player.
We're going to get one quick one, another one in here, because you guys, well, we have time. Okay. So why not help the people? I'm here to help the people. Jamie's very efficient. That's where we're going next. Gabe, he wants to know whether to start, this is an easy one, in a PPR league, Mike Gillislee or DeMarco Murray. Please tell me both of you are. Okay.
DeMarco, the Titans can't quit him.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but Mike Gillislee in a PPR league, he's not going to get a lot of touches. He hasn't been getting a lot of touches. He might get you a touchdown, but DeMarco Murray's been the guy. He is the featured back.
He's the bell cow. He's the workhorse.
All right, guys. Any parting thoughts for Week 4 about your personal teams? Or you need to get anything off your chest?
Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger. If he can play better on the road, that's much appreciated. Throw a couple touchdowns to Antonio Brown.
It's probably not going to happen.
I'm hanging my hat on the Rashard Matthews pick this week.
Okay.
I mean, that's the one I'm hanging my hat on.
I like that.
When I make and the Cam Newton one, obviously, but those are my 2 bold ones this week. I think Matthews Matthews has a really good game for Tennessee and establishes himself, and I think Cam has a big game.
Not to turn this into a what we learned segment at the end of the show, but I think it's important to look at the 2 points that we made up on the show a bunch. You need to look at the process, who's getting a lot of targets, who's getting the most production, and 2, if you have quarterbacks that can run the ball a little bit, the upside there is great because their floor is so high.
Again, let's look at the wager that we have going into next week. Mostly to know about this is that I schnookered my way into getting free breakfast no matter what happens, okay, because I'm the smart one here. Jamie is going to be starting Tyrod Taylor, and Chris is giving Chris's crush of the week to Cam Newton, and that is a big boomer bust because that could be really good or really bad. So you're either riding with Chris this week or you're riding with Jamie. So we'll see where it was.
You got to put a Twitter poll question out after.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna put this on Twitter. Be sure to find me at the sports page. You can find Jamie. Jamie, tell everybody how they can find you.
At JME Eisner.
And Chris?
At Chris R. Schubert.
Yep, you can find me at _sports page. And as always, good luck to you in your fantasy this week. For Jamie, Chris, I'm Paige. We'll see you next Sunday.